Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP, and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekulona, and this is Nashville. As he does every month, Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell is here to talk about what he's working on and to take calls from you, his constituents. If it's important to you, today you have the chance to talk about it with Mayor O'Connell. Then later this hour, a WPLN reporter covering the State House, Marianna Bacallao, and Char Daston will be here to give us an update on the state legislature. So to talk with Mayor O'Connell, call 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. As a matter of fact, a few people are already on the line. We will be getting to you all in a moment. But as always, remember that the mayor and his staff are human beings just like you and me. So respect is a must. If you're elated or angry, that is totally cool. Just show respect and care when expressing your thoughts and feelings. With that, I'd like to welcome Mayor O'Connell back to This Is Nashville. Good to see you, Mr. Mayor.
Khalil, good to be back with you.
All right, so this is very tough for all of us, and we were kind of talking about this before the show started. Last week was a tough one for Nashville.
Yeah, one of our toughest.
And really for the tough for the students of Antioch High School, the parents, the teachers, the staff, and the community. And most importantly, the family of 16-year-old Jocelyn Correa Escalante, who was killed on that day, last Wednesday.
Yeah.
When you were asked about what could be done, you said we're not going to see, quote, much action from the state in an environment where it's clear that issue groups continue to be very supportive of a low regulatory environment for guns. So we're going to continue to look at what we're doing here locally, end quote. What are you looking at and what can be done at the local level?
Yeah, we started my term in office looking at coming off, right? I took office just months after the Covenant school shooting. So we were already looking intensely at gun violence prevention measures. We have engaged with the Office of Family Safety. We've engaged with our judiciary around some simple things that are already legal for us to take, some improved actions around, including a narrow window where we do have some ability to keep guns out of the hands of people who clearly should not have them. And those involve typically dispossession scenarios around people who may have charges related to domestic violence, for instance. And so we started with that. We've continued to work on the process of group violence intervention and interruption in the community. The Metro Public Health Department currently has some funding. We've gotten some outside groups engaged in that. So we've also, we're very fortunate to have had some additional funding this year to create an Office of Youth Safety. I'm incredibly encouraged that we have had now hundreds of applicants for that position. So I think what that reveals to me is that this is very much both a priority for the community, but also that we've got a talent pool that wants to invest themselves in helping us find solutions. So even before last Wednesday, we were not sitting still. We were working through MNPD with some traditional approaches within policing to look at things. They've made some announcements about changes to their patrol model that they've made. They started a focus last year on car-based crimes and those kinds of things. I think you've seen this week that Metro Schools is piloting another round of on-site technology as a potential preventive measure. And we continue to work closely with Dr. Battle and Chief Drake and the school board as we evaluate those kinds of programs. But, we also have Watisha Lawless-Mitchell on our team, our Director of Children and Youth Initiatives, who's been working with the Mayor's Youth Council. And we, just a few months ago, had a really remarkable summit that a group of interns in our office worked with young people who were participating in the Power Youth Initiative, a great program housed at the Metro Action Commission that's about opportunities for young people and how they were experiencing safety or needed more safety resources from the standpoint of them being young people. And so digesting that, moving that forward, hoping that aligns very nicely with the brand new Office of Youth Safety. So it's something we were already taking seriously, but it's, these kinds of moments propel you to redouble those efforts.
Now, Police Chief John Drake announced on Monday that a third school resource officer, or commonly known as an SRO, was being assigned to Antioch High School. Is this a permanent addition?
It sounds like it might be, and I think what they've been looking at as MMPD was there that day and the immediate aftermath, just assessing the size of the school facility, but also the size of the student body. It is currently, I believe, the largest high school in metro schools, with McGavock, I think, being second largest. And I think they were looking at just, sheer coverage in terms of amount of ground to cover, amount of students on a sort of like what is our allocation of safety resources there. So it sounds like it might be they may actually continue to do that evaluation where they're looking at size of facility, number of students, those kinds of things. But it sounds like, again, he and Dr. Battle have been working very closely on the overall project of school-based safety.
You mentioned earlier that Antioch High School is looking into acquiring new technologies for preventative measures. I'm curious, are there any changes being made at additional schools?
It sounds like this is a pilot, and it sounds like this is, focused on that acute trauma that students and families, faculty and staff at Antioch High School, even just to come back into that building, I think it makes some sense for them to see immediately some upgrades there. I think that's why it's also being positioned, and I think very appropriately, as a pilot. And they'll assess it, they'll look at cost, they'll look at, are we implementing this in a way that is meeting our both safety goals, but also the kind of goals for the learning environment, the learning community out there. Are parents and students comfortable with this? Are school board members? Eventually, if this is something we want to expand, then we'll have to have that conversation about cost, and it'll come over to our office and the Metro Council. And so I think it's very appropriate that they're looking at it as a pilot first and foremost.
You grew up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your parents, your children attend schools.
Yep.
What do you want to say to reassure parents, teachers, and students about this tragic situation we're once again facing?
I guess what I would say is we had a difficult conversation in our house about it because similar to what happened after Covenant, and it's hard to explain why this is, but in the aftermath of the Antioch High School shooting, we have seen a period of sustained threats. It's another wave of traumatic incidents. And so, for instance, our older daughter and some of her friends through social media saw their school on a list. This is a very hard thing. But what I would say to reassure people is that we do have a variety of intelligence measures. We have a great network of cooperative layering of local, state, and federal resources that take all of this incredibly seriously. We actually have had some recent arrests of some pretty high-profile figures. One of them, I think, very preventive in nature, and another one responding to an issue of intimidation and harassment. And both of these involved local faith communities, but we have also had a series of arrests over the past couple of weeks that are demonstrating there is zero tolerance for people threatening schools. And meanwhile, we have systematically, including since the tragic Covenant school shooting, done some things on campus grounds and within metro schools. I mean, I guess I would say even in knowing that it's hard to feel safe in an environment where you're not seeing a lot of policy response from state and federal actors, where we have therefore a limited policy response we can make. We have driven down the number of guns stolen from vehicles. We have expanded mental health and social and emotional supports within schools. I mean, we're not standing still. We're responding locally. And as a parent, we have these conversations under our roof, and our daughters are back in school, and they're thinking first and foremost about their friends and the things that they're learning, and we're going to continue to do that. And I am, as a result of both their presence in my life, and their status as students in our public school system, and all of us as residents in Nashville, I am personally devoted to safety as our top priority.
Yeah, I'm curious about, we understand what the local, state, and federal government can do as far as policy, but I'm curious about the potential of a conversation with Nashvillians to see where everyone feels. There's a lot of people who have an understanding of what they believe the core problem and the root of the problem is. Is there a way to have a town hall or a series where Nashvillians can talk with each other and our elected officials to where we can understand how we feel as a city, so it'll help us better address what to do to mitigate, if not eradicate, this problem?
Yeah, this is something we actually also came into office thinking very hard about. In fact, one of our team members, Dr. Isaac Adai, used to facilitate in the community this series of conversations called Conscious Conversations. We've had one focused kind of broadly on policing as a public safety scenario, but we had actually talked about doing a series there. When Mayor Berry was in office, she did this really remarkable session called Real Talk that took place at the convention center after it had opened. And you had, I think, about 1,000 people showed up for that. And it was really just a conversation about difficult conversations about sort of the intersection of race and politics and society. And I went and participated just as a person in the city. And our table it's still an incredibly memorable moment for me that did foster some conversations that have continued to this day. And so it's something we were already actively considering. And in this specific dimension, I think a couple of lead-ins to it have been the one conscious conversation we had, and then also this really great youth-based and youth-focused conversation, youth-led conversation that we did over at the Oasis Center a few months ago was sort of, we hope, a prelude to some more of that activity. But I think we have so many great youth organizations with great leadership. We have so many really wonderful faith communities that have interacted successfully. We've seen the organization Samar Ali has had millions of conversations, that has done some things, and we've watched some of our academic communities create some space for that. And so there's been this informal series of conversations that's happened, but I think we're looking to try to create a more sustainable platform for that.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to immigration and the state legislature. We had a listener.
Before we do that,
yes.
I do want to just note that for anybody who needs resources urgently, who's still more than a week later, if you are suffering and have not found a pathway, or you have curiosity about what's going on, Nashville.gov, if you just visit the main Metro website, we've got a banner that's been up since last week that we have had continuously updated resources there. A lot of those are focused on things like how to have conversations with young people about these kinds of incidents, trauma, et cetera. And then similarly, we have a new fund. We partnered with the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. So if you visit cfmt.org, there are families. This is a community that needs support, and definitely encourage people who have the ability to check that out and support folks.
All right, we're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to come back to your phone calls and have a longer conversation with Mayor O'Connell. You can ask the mayor for yourself. It's your turn to talk. Call us up, 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
We want Freddie for a leader. All the state and raise your champagne glass. Freddie for a leader. Freddie is a man of class. We want Freddie for a
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Welcome back to Your Turn to Talk Thursday. Today is Ask the Mayor with Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell. We deeply appreciate that the mayor takes time out of his busy schedule to join us for these very important and special episodes. To talk with Mayor O'Connell, call us up 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. Mr. Mayor, again, thank you for being with us. We had some people who called immediately as the show started, which is a first. And so we are totally going to go to Margaret in Nashville. Margaret,
hi guys.
How are you? Thank you for calling. What would you like to share with us, Margaret?
Okay, so thank you both for your work in Nashville. I'm very appreciative of the time and effort you put into our city. I was calling, my daughter she's in first grade at a Metro public school here in Nashville, and they had a verbal threat a few days ago where the student talked about shooting and a threat towards the school. So I'm curious kind of what the procedural steps are after there's a verbal threat that involves guns, and is there a procedural step for like a warrant to search the home for weapons? Unfortunately, right now in the climate of guns being everywhere in a lot of people's hands, I'm just kind of curious how that works and what the process is.
Yeah, Margaret, that's a great and important question for the environment that you're keenly aware of right now. So I'll say it this way. First and foremost, if the threat is clearly made aware to school officials, that tends to be where it starts, right? We treat, the schools kind of have their own distinct environment and process they follow. It's tough because we know that things circulate on social media or on sites and services like Nextdoor, group text messages, all that kind of stuff. And so the first thing that we would encourage anybody to do is if there is any kind of credible threat that is clearly sourced to a student or a phone call or something like that, that people do report it, right? That at least a trusted teacher, a counselor at the school, even a school nurse, an administrator, that somebody be made aware of it. Or separately, again, if it's an environment where a parent becomes aware and it's a credible threat, and it's after the school day is done that it's discovered, a direct call to MMPD can help there, right? So the first step is reporting it. Once it's reported, then you kind of, it's the evaluation of what is the nature of the threat, what is the seriousness of it. But as I was sharing with Khalil just a few moments ago, in the wake of the Antioch High School shooting, we have seen more than 50 different threats related to schools or specific individuals at schools or those kinds of scenarios, and it has resulted in several arrests. And so it kind of depends on the magnitude of the threat, the type of threat, how it was issued, all those kinds of things. But those are, when those arrests happen, again, on the basis of it, there may very well be a scenario that results in a search warrant, but it tends to put it in the category of active investigation. And we often, and I know this from interacting with police at a neighborhood level before being on Metro Council, a lot of times once it hits that investigation status, it tends to be hey, we're not going to release public information until we've reached another conclusive scenario here, right? So we may not hear a whole lot about it, except that we know that, for instance, an individual involved in that threat might have been arrested or might have been contacted by police.
Margaret, let me ask you a question. I can't imagine how difficult it's been to talk to your daughter about this situation, again, after Covenant School and now Antioch. How have you been communicating to her about what the situation is?
Unfortunately, this is just kind of the climate we live in, and my husband and I are very honest with her, but obviously in an age-appropriate manner.
Yep.
And I know Metro sent out, after there was a threat, we got an email from our fabulous principal, and they gave us a bunch of resources of, trauma, coping with trauma, how to talk to your kids, which was really helpful. But we're very honest with her. Fortunately, the threat that was made during school hours at school, none of the kids knew about it.
Yeah.
It was towards the teacher, which was great because I was like, oh, gosh, I don't have to talk about this with my first grader.
Right. You don't have to extend the trauma in a way, right?
Yes. She's very aware. Like, after Covenant, she was in preschool, and she came home and said, why did this happen? Why did it? So we have very honest discussions. And, I tell her we're trying to get legislators, we're trying to get people, who are going to make laws that keep you safer. So that's why we vote. That's why we speak up and everything. So anyways, so that's that. I hate that this is where we are, but
I know, me too.
We got to move forward and do something about it.
Margaret, can I ask a couple of other quick questions on Khalil's follow-up there? So both of our daughters, again, one in elementary, one in middle school and metro schools. And I will say, in these given circumstances where we've seen some of those things, I have watched our school leaders and the teachers that are in place at both schools do a really effective job of communication. And, I will say I have felt reassured as a parent based on their responses. In the circumstance you're describing, I guess I would ask, have you felt like it was kind of like, did it seem like it went through a process that was effective in terms of recognizing it and responding to it?
Yes. I mean, they have done everything right, and I feel completely confident in all of the staff steps moving forward, and our principal is just awesome. I feel very confident in their skills and knowledge about everything. It's the trickiest part for me as a parent, and I think other parents as well, was just when you get that email, it's very vague. But obviously with legalities, they can't share a certain amount of information. So you're kind of in limbo. But, so I feel very confident. They're like, we are assuring you there is no threat, and I trust them. I think that's part of it. You just have to trust that, that they know what they're doing and they have your kids' best interests and safety at heart. And I texted her teacher right away and just said, I'm so grateful for you. And she said, we're going to keep your baby safe, which just breaks my heart. I wish that wasn't their responsibility and their job. But again, here we are. So hopefully we'll get to pay them more in the future for them kind of being on the front lines, which I hate to say. But yes, I'm very confident. I'm so grateful for all the staff and how they responded. And I know our principal said, MNPD, everyone was just so helpful right away. They knew just what they were doing. The process was just easy, and they jumped on it quickly. So, well,
that's what we want across the board. It's something, again, it's the place we hate to be, but we do want all of these things to be in a place where if somebody is going to be involved in, flagrantly inappropriate scenarios of making threats, we are not going to tolerate that as a community.
All right. Thank you, Margaret. Really appreciate you calling. Thank you for us and safety to you and the family, okay?
Okay, thank you. Y'all too.
Thanks,
Have a
Margaret.
good day.
All right, you too.
Bye.
All right, we're going to go to another call. We've got Duncan in Nashville. Duncan, my friend. Thank you for calling, Duncan. What would you like to share?
Oh, hey, thanks for having me. A long-time listener, first-time caller. Right before the Covenant shooting happened, lawmakers were working to pass a law where a person could bring a semi-automatic long rifle up to the Capitol steps, no problem. They put that on pause after Covenant, but they refused to speak to the parents of Covenant. Then they banned the parents of Covenant from being there. Then they banned the parents of Covenant from having signs calling them out. And as a Nashville native, I've got 4 boys in school here. After Antioch, I don't see anybody the lawmakers stepping up trying to talk about it. How many more shootings do we have to have before the lawmakers who make the laws here regarding guns going to sit down with the parents and say, okay, we're ready to listen? Because that's something that hasn't happened.
Duncan, I can say, as somebody who knew many families at the Covenant School and was standing alongside them and was up at the Capitol multiple times in that spring and summer of 2023, I think that's maybe one of the hardest parts, but I think maybe also one of the things that Covenant helped spur that's continued to this day is that I think it isn't any longer just Nashville. I was impressed to watch students from counties outside of Nashville join Covenant families and parents there, and I was similarly encouraged to watch students this past week from Antioch High School be some of the first to be there, so that there is this, I think, the more voices that join this conversation about how we successfully reduce and prevent gun violence in certainly schools, but we hope in multiple other contexts as well. I think it really is helpful to have every new voice that joins that conversation, even sadly when those voices join because a result of a profound tragedy in our community.
Duncan, I really appreciate you calling. Thank you so much. Have a good day, my friend, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right. Okay, Mr. Mayor, I do want to move over to immigration because that's another issue that's really at the top of the mind for a lot of people here in Nashville. We had a listener named Drew write in to ask, quote, with Middle Tennessee and Nashville specifically having a less than insignificant population of undocumented or, quote, illegal immigrants, how does Mayor O'Connell feel about Trump's mass deportation agenda? What does or would expelling unauthorized immigrants do to the Nashville economy? And what will Mayor O'Connell do to help support or thwart Trump's plan?
Well, first and foremost, I would say, regardless of leadership at the state or federal level, when we know that our constitutional rights are being violated, our Department of Law has stood ready time and time again to defend exactly those rights, and they will continue to do so. We know that Nashville is not the only community that has seen a lack of constitutionality in, for instance, recent orders from the Office of Management and Budget at the federal level to immediately suspend spending and grant fulfillment and all those kinds of things. I think communities across America were pitched into chaos. The same has been true on some of this, the mass deportation scenarios. And I think I just saw Mayor Julian Bibb, who is now president of the Democratic Mayors Association, released a statement this week talking about, I think mayors across America are invested in the safety of their communities. But when this starts to move beyond that into basic household economics or families, when you've got students who are dreamers, people who arrived here where it was not maybe even a decision that they could make, when you've got families that are trying to be together and take advantage of opportunity and may still have pathways to citizenship. I think there are so many parts of this conversation that, similar to those spending things, when it becomes an urgent matter, I think you're going to start to see more voices become a part of this if it is in fact something that is going beyond just a basic crime and safety scenario. And I think for our standpoint, we're going to continue to defend the city's constitutional rights and the constitutional rights of our residents and businesses and so forth. And then similarly, my job as mayor is to be the mayor of the city, of everyone who resides here, regardless of whether you have housing or anything about how you exist as a Nashvilleian. That's sort of our top priority, is to protect people.
All right. We have another question, but right now we're going to go to a call from Elena. Elena in Nashville, thank you so much for calling. What would you like to share with us?
Hey, thanks. So a lot was just answered about the immigration. I just wanted to ask quickly, what role do the Metro Police have with ICE, and what does that look like? Do they help them, or?
No, Chief Drake and our Metro Nashville Police Department, really across Metro, we have no formal coordination process with ICE. And so I think as state lawmakers have gotten involved in this conversation even before the most recent election, we've been very clear this is not something, if you are involved in a process of response to a request for service, a crime resolution scenario, engagement in the community, it is not something that our local police are doing to even be aware of anybody's immigration status. And so we have no expectation that is going to change.
All right.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elena. Have a good day. Okay, so another question for you. An immigration plan crafted by Governor Lee passed the Senate last night. And it's on the House of the floor today as we speak. Part of the bill creates, quote, a Class E felony offense for local officials who adopt or maintain sanctuary city policies in violation of a state law, and empowers the Tennessee Attorney General to initiate removal proceedings for officials convicted of violating anti-sanctuary city provisions, end quote. That's a lot. What does that mean for you in the Metro Council?
For me personally, I don't think it means much. I think I'm scratching my head about some specific provisions of this law. The General Assembly already made it statewide illegal for cities in Tennessee to be sanctuary cities. I don't know that there was never a time when I was on the Metro Council over the past 8 years, and I don't know if this Metro Council was considering it, but I don't think there had ever been serious consideration of our declaring ourselves that. So again, it's one way or the other. It's already illegal. I would say, though, even so, it is, and I say this as a layperson, but I'll follow up on that. It is obviously unconstitutional to make voting on something a felony, and I think I will say I've already heard concerns from our Department of Law about that, but I don't know that it's going to matter because we've already seen the state legislature effectively preempt the need for that specific provision. What else happens in that law? I will say there has been so much over just the past 2 weeks that we have had to respond to from a standpoint of our Department of Finance, looking at federal funding status. We are evaluating everything that is occurring in the special session, especially as laws, move, get amended, pass one or both chambers, await the governor's signature. As we look at executive orders and directives from federal agencies, we are in a highly chaotic period of nearly daily evaluation of the legal and financial landscape that, frankly, is making it harder to deliver effective local governance.
Should this bill become law, are you preparing a legal challenge?
I think the question would be, even if it is obviously unconstitutional, do we even expect it to apply? And would we need to do so on a preemptive basis? Are there other cities that would be looking at a similar challenge? I don't know the answer to that yet. I think, again, we're gonna wait to see what finally passes, what the governor chooses to sign, et cetera.
All right, that's the political environment. Let's talk about our natural environment. We saw some really cold weather this month, and the city runs what's called the Metro Emergency Overflow Shelter. Can you briefly tell us what that's about?
Yeah, and this goes back. When I was on the Metro Council, when I first got elected in 2015, I asked then Vice Mayor Briley to consider appointing me to what was then the Homelessness Commission. That's since evolved to what is now the Homelessness Planning Council. It has some alignment with another entity we have locally called the Continuum of Care, which is something that is part of an interaction with the Federal Housing and Urban Development Agency that helps with federal funding flows to local jurisdictions that are looking to prevent and mitigate homelessness. And so I've got a lot of experience in this. There has been a long-running conversation about emergency weather altogether. It is not just a consideration for deeply cold periods of winter. It's also for extremely hot periods of summer and access to water and public facilities. A lot of these scenarios got very challenged during COVID, for instance, when access to any facility was pretty tightly constrained, and there were a number of other health issues. What we just went through was a period of deep cold. There was a period that preceded the extremely low temperatures where we also had a few days of precipitation where we got some snow on the ground. And we have a cold weather community response plan. I think a lot of people probably know that we have 2 anchor shelters in our environment, the Nashville Rescue Mission and Room in the Inn, which not only has its primary campus, but also frequently activates other congregations. And our emergency overflow shelter is exactly that. In fact, it's been a challenge because previous to this year, Metro Social Services would operate that. Prior to that, OEM was often involved, our Office of Emergency Management. They still support that activity. This year was the first year it was operated by a new entity, the Office of Homeless Services, which now is kind of the staff part of that Homelessness Planning Council and Continuum of Care access. And every winter, generally speaking, if it is below 32 degrees, we're going to have that shelter open. The part that was kind of a wrinkle to the plan that the Homelessness Planning Council has adopted this year was that we had a day when snow was falling when temperatures actually were above 32 degrees. So it wasn't planned to be open 24/7. Now, we looked at ways to extend that taking into account the fact that we may not be at the temperature trigger, but it's tough to have people out and when there's snow on the ground, if you, had been living in an outdoor capacity in any way, or in a period where, for instance, we knew Metro was mostly closed that day. So already we've been looking at updates to next year's plan, but I participated in 3 days of volunteering to have extended hours at that shelter. But also in that period, we had additional capacity in our anchor shelters. And sometimes this winds up being, even in really extreme weather scenarios, a point of personal preference for people who may be experiencing homelessness as to whether they want to go into one of those anchor shelters, whether they can, if they've got pets, family, some other thing, if they've had previous encounters. And so all of those things carry with them when they come to Metro shelters. And we have to be mindful of security and operational scenarios, the basics of plumbing, the availability of kitchen time, and all of those things. And so I will say the Office of Homeless Services has managed that process throughout. And I think the hardest part was that period when we had a series of cold weather days and then we had precipitation, but it wasn't at the threshold where we usually open. And so we're always looking to improve, and that's kind of the lay of the land right now. But it's been open for several days this winter, and that means that people who are usually working a standard day shift, unless you're on one of the outreach teams, you've had a lot of people who have had to reorient their entire professional lives to operate this emergency scenario.
And I have to go to a call and then go to a break, but I'm just curious if staffing levels are difficult to maintain, even though this is they're needed in sporadic nature. Is it fair to say that the Office of Homeless Management would be hiring folks? So if there's someone listening who's very interested in the need of work and also wants to do this type of work, will there be positions open that people can apply for?
Well, so here's what again, going back to my time on both the Homelessness Commission and then the Homelessness Planning Council, eventually what was the Homeless Impact Division and continuing into the Office of Homeless Services, the ideal model would be that you would have a provider that is sheltering is their model, and they have space and team and ability to scale and respond. And we've had an RFP out there for multiple years that we just have not matched, like we have not found that fit in the provider space. But I think we've got some ideas after this winter that may improve the landscape for a partner to Metro to offer exactly what you just described.
All right. I want to thank Mr. Mayor Freddie O'Connell for coming in to taking your phone calls. He does this once a month, and he takes time out of his schedule to do it. Mayor O'Connell, again, thank you very much for being here.
Glad to do it, Khalil. Thanks.
All right, we're going to take one last break. When we come back, WPLN's Marianna Bacallao will report live from the Capitol to give us an update on the state legislature and what's been going on during the special session of the 114th General Assembly. We know you have questions, so call us 615-760-2000. This is Nashville.
Stay to raise your champagne glass. We want Freddie for a leader. Freddie is a man in class. We want Freddie for a leader.
I'm Khalil Colonna, and this is Nashville. The state legislative session is in full swing and in the middle of a special session called by Governor Bill Lee to address his school voucher proposal, immigration enforcement measures, and disaster relief for those affected by Hurricane Helene in East Tennessee. Full meetings of the Tennessee State House and the Senate to vote on the proposals are happening right now. And joining us from the state capitol with an update is the WPLN reporter covering the State House, Marianna Bacallao. She's also joined by WPLN reporter Char Daston. It's good to have you both on the show. Thank you both for being here and taking time. And it is your turn to talk Thursday, so we want to hear from you. The state legislature special session is focused. Is it focused on the right priorities? Give us a call, 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. Marianna, while we got you, I know you may have to be on call because of press availability. Let me ask you this real quick. What is the temperature there? What's the environment like at the State House?
So it does feel a little bit like 2023 again here at the State House. We have a lot of protesters in the gallery. I'm on the House floor right now, while in the balcony attached to the House floor to take this call. But right now, a lot of protesters, a lot of anti-school voucher protesters, as that's what the House is discussing at the moment. And a lot of, our Republican supermajority are steadfast in the fact that, or the belief that the school voucher program is going to help families and that school choice is what's best for parents. Obviously, the other side is sort of, a lot of teachers are concerned about cutting funding to their schools. There's provisions in the bill that will answer for that. But right now, it's just a lot of tension, a lot of activity here at the State House.
So you kind of mentioned the essence of this school voucher plan that Governor Lee has introduced and has really been pushing to get made into law. The plan would give families public funds to pay for tuition at private schools. Comes with a price tag of nearly $1 billion to the state. You gave us some information of what's for and against, but I'm interested in this $1 billion price tag. Where will the money come from to pay for that plan?
So the $1 billion actually comes from how much all the items considered in this special session will cost. For the first year of this Education Freedom Act, it would be about $450 million just for that first year, and it's expected to grow the number of people who are able to take advantage of the scholarship program. And a lot of that money comes from the actual, it's just a little over $7,000 per student, per family, to go towards private school tuition, other fees, transportation to private school, laptops, classroom supplies, things of that nature. And there is some money earmarked to help public schools so that when students disenroll from public schools, they don't see a decrease in their budget. However, a state fiscal review found that that money that's earmarked only covers less than 7% of what public schools are expected to lose if this passes.
So public schools, will they be fully funded regardless of what happens, or compared, from what we get from that review, or are they going to be in tough space?
I mean, what Republican lawmakers are saying is that there's what's called a hold harmless clause. It's part of this bill that will keep public schools funded as the program grows. But there's a lot of skepticism from Democrats, from teachers, and the state's own fiscal review had that finding that the money might not be enough. Of course, the state legislature, they say that they can always reconvene next year after this first year to see how much more money needs to go towards that. But it's kind of up in the air.
All right. So what happened with the plan today in session?
Well, it's still currently happening. A lot of Democrats have proposed amendments. All of them have failed. Some of those amendments would have, extended protections for students with disabilities that are, federal protections that public schools have to follow. Private schools are not always subject to and don't always, have IEPs or meet the federal standards for what students with disabilities might need. And other amendments, which would have also part of this bill, is a $2,000 bonus, one-time bonus for teachers, for school districts that opt into accepting that money. And there were amendments to make that a part of the teacher's salary, and those amendments failed.
Okay. All right. I know you are hot on the beat, so we're going to turn to immigration. Marianna, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Char, you've been covering immigration for the station, and I mentioned earlier the state legislature is in special session for the voucher program, immigration enforcement, and disaster relief programs. There's been some conflict between Republican senators yesterday. Chattanooga Senator Todd Gardenhire attempted to add an amendment to a bill that criticized what he called, quote unquote, a last minute surprise from the governor to include immigration in the special session. What did his amendment attempt to do?
Right. So what passed in the Senate yesterday was the proposed kind of omnibus immigration bill by the governor. And there were three major things it did. One, it created this, state immigration enforcement agency, which I think would make it easier to collaborate with ICE, with the federal immigration enforcement agency. Two, it would mandate that immigrants have a different colored driver's license than U.S. citizens. And three, it would it would make it a Class E felony for a local official to vote for a local sanctuary city policy. And I think Gardenhire was the only Republican no vote, and I think that was the thing that he was objecting to. I think he wanted to not make it a felony for a local official to vote for a sanctuary city policy.
Can you clarify what this would mean for local legislative bodies like the Nashville Metro Council if this thing passes?
Yeah, we don't know. As I said, it's gotten through the Senate. It needs to get through the House. I imagine this would be challenged in court under sort of free speech law. But also, I should say, it is already illegal for local, cities and towns in Nashville to be sanctuary cities. A sanctuary city means you don't collaborate with federal immigration enforcement, and local law enforcement under state law already has to collaborate with federal law enforcement. So I'm not sure exactly what this would do.
Have you heard from any representatives of immigrant rights organizations or activists?
What we're hearing is obviously these have not become laws yet, but the combination of this and, new federal policies relating to immigration enforcement, I think it's creating a lot of fear in immigrant communities right now. I think fewer people are going to school or work. They're staying home out of fear.
What do you keep an eye on as you look further into this, as this continues to develop?
Yeah, I'm going to be keeping an eye on, if people continue to stay home from school and work. I am going to be looking at following some immigration lawyers to see what their work has been like and what it's like over the next few months, both folks who serve undocumented immigrants and those who serve, legal immigrants. And I will see if this big omnibus immigration bill passes in the state legislature and becomes law.
Do you know where it stands right now?
It's got to get through the House of Representatives, but it passed the Senate pretty easily. It only got one Republican no vote, and that was Gardenhire, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I want to talk real quick about disaster relief. A couple minutes left. Last night, additional relief for Hurricane Helene recovery passed through the special session. Can you tell us if you know what that plan looks like and how it will benefit storm survivors?
Right. And I should say I am very much the second string quarterback. Marianna is our reporter at the State House, but as we mentioned, she had to go.
Yeah.
It is a very dynamic, fast-moving situation in that special session.
Backup quarterbacks can win championships, so
Thank
I'll let you know that.
As far as I know, the Hurricane Helene recovery part of this special session, it would give more money to TEMA, the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, and to localities that are trying to fight disasters so that they wouldn't just have to rely so much on FEMA, the federal agency.
Okay. Now, back to immigration. There was some drama at the State House yesterday during the immigration proposal debate. 3 women were removed by state troopers after some lawmakers complained about their behavior. Do you know what happened? Can you tell us?
As far as I know, they were snapping like you would do at a poetry reading.
Okay.
I guess it offended the legislators, and these women were carried out of the State House.
Do you have an idea of what ultimately happened to them after they got carried out?
I don't think they were charged, but you're going to have to ask Marianna about that.
All right, we will. We'll have you both back on to give us an update. Char Daston is a reporter from WPLN News, and Marianna Bacallao, she was on the line, but she is at the State House covering what's happening just for you to keep you all informed. Char, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much, and Godspeed, Marianna.
That's right. She's going to need it. All right, to y'all. We really appreciate you all taking time to call us up on these Thursday shows. We do this for you because your voices are so important. And trust me, I don't know how many mayors in the country are taking time every month to talk to their constituents. So again, whenever you have the chance, give us a call, 615-760-2000, 615-760-2000. And if we don't have time to get to your call, call. Trust that we are going to take the notes and bring it up at another time. As always, thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Mary Mancini. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Josh Deepin was on the phones. Our technical director and board operators, Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. Special thanks to the newsroom at WPLN. They are working hard on all of our behalves. And the conversation never ends here. Call and comment. Tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message. 615-751-2500. You can hit us up on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Twitter at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Lake Alona. We'll see you on Monday, everybody. And be good to each other.